Penn State football fans that have been following recruiting with us at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com or here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube page, we've been doing our committed series for a while now, but we're in the section, Fitz, Sean Fitz, insider for Penn State football recruiting, that I think a lot of fans have been waiting for. You've been hinting at it the last couple of months. It's flip season. Penn State gets a commit from the class of 2025, so welcome to the show and tell Penn State fans the good news for recruiting this cycle.
Yeah, the early stages of flip season coming off of the last weekend in July. So what you're seeing in 2025 right now is sort of the remnants of stuff moving out from those barbecues and those get-togethers and camps and everything like that. And you're seeing that in 26 as well, but mostly in 2025, you're dealing with the remnants of the end of July. And right now, Penn State is doing that. They have flipped St. Joseph Prep linebacker Cam Smith from Philadelphia. He's actually from across the river in Salem, New Jersey, but they've flipped him and added him to the class. This is a name that is familiar to a lot of Penn State fans because if you look at the early stages of this class, it was a guy that was mentioned. Smith was on the board for a while, and then all of a sudden he wasn't, and he ended up committing to a familiar name in Manny Diaz down at Duke back in February. So it's been an interesting one to follow, especially because, looking at the early stages of the class, you thought he was going to eventually end up in it. Didn't think it would take this path, but now all of a sudden, Penn State lands him. He is a 4-star prospect by the On3 industry rankings, number 264 overall, number 26 linebacker, number 8 in Pennsylvania. Remember that one, in Pennsylvania.
Yep.
On On3, he's slightly below that, an 89 3-star prospect. So he rides that line between the 3-star, 4-star. But you put on the tape, it's a pretty good player right there. The size is what it is. He's a little bit over 6 foot, 6.5 inches, what we have, a little bit over 200 pounds. He will grow. But he's a productive player on the best defense in the state, on the best football team in the state. And Penn State has not gone to St. Joe's Prep in a long, long time.
Yeah, this is something that I was interested in with this particular storyline of was a part of the class, suddenly wasn't, commits to Duke. But Penn State has done really well in Pittsburgh, in the western side of the state. We've talked, we did almost a whole show segment on that. Here is a Philadelphia guy. So how important do you think that is a part of the conversation? And, this particular school that has a lot of talent.
The stat that's going to be tossed out about, and it's worth repeating, of course, is that Penn State has not signed a St. Joe's Prep player since John Reed in 2015. That is a long, long time ago, an eternity when you're talking about recruiting. They were in it for a couple of guys in St. Joe's Prep, and it's been really interesting to follow because there hasn't been the ton of top-level talent, like the Penn State level talent. Now you've got Marvin Harrison, of course, and Kyle McCord went to Ohio State a couple of years ago. But there was a little bit of a downtime where you had guys like Darrell Simmons that went to Virginia Tech, and just not quite at that level. So that came and went, and then by the time it rolled around in the 2025 class, you've got Anthony Sacchi, you've got Maxwell Roy, you got Cam Smith, you got Khalil Stewart, the offensive lineman. So it all of a sudden jumped. Not out of nowhere, because St. Joe's Prep basically wins the state title every year, but
right.
It became a situation where you found a higher level target at St. Joe's Prep, and Penn State, for whatever reason, went with Cam Smith early and then kind of backed away. Same with Khalil Stewart. He committed to Maryland and flipped to Syracuse. Anthony Sacchi was in and out, Maxwell Roy in and out. But now they do land their guy in Cam Smith. This is a guy that I've always liked. You look at him, and he's going to run parallel in terms of Penn State fans with DJ McClary. Truth be told, saw DJ McClary this spring, reinforced my idea that I think Cam Smith's a better player. You look at the film, of course, the danger with looking at the film of a guy on St. Joe's Prep is that everybody's pretty good. You got Alex Haskell, who's a 2026 that I love in front of him, Maxwell Worst. You've got Isaac Planner. You've got a lot of talent surrounding him. So good is this? Will continue. You with the St. Francis guys are stars in the high school field. Do they translate to the college game? Some do, some don't. There's no formula for how this works. But you look at what he does as a linebacker, a bit undersized, but you and I were having the discussion before we went on air. Is he a box linebacker? Is he that Sam that Penn State now used to play before we went into that 4-5-2? And I don't think there's a pigeonhole here, because you look at a guy that does things in space. He does coverage. He also plays in traffic. He's going to have to learn to play off of traffic a little bit more, and he'll do that as he gets bigger. But he closes really well. He closes under control. I mean, this is not a guy that just goes full bore into every tackle, and you see that on some of his highlights, especially when he's tracking down the quarterback who is scrambling. He does a really nice job breaking down, but staying at a decent speed keep up that pursuit, to finish the tackle. He does really a lot of things well. So I think size is a bit of a knock here, but at the same time, productive guy on a great defense, and certainly can help you in state moving forward.
Yeah, I think since Alex Tash, this is the guy that you'd say this is a pure linebacker, and one that reminds you of Penn State linebacker commits in the past. Somebody who, as you mentioned, is good in coverage, has the athleticism to play linebacker full stop. Penn State has always recruited these guys that can play Sam, but can develop into a will linebacker. And you laid it out perfectly, so I don't want to repeat everything you just said, but a player who's got the instincts on that level to play in the box, and those box level instincts are super important when you're talking about where he projects, at the next level. So despite the size, the growth potential is there as well. So the measurements that I always talk about in terms of what does his frame look like, those are all positives too. This is a guy who maybe he's 6'1" eventually, like maybe he grows half an inch, maybe he doesn't, but he does have the frame to grow into a box size linebacker. And some of those things that I think from a missed tackle perspective, the length, the reach, those are still important for a linebacker. And he checks all of those measurables off in a big way. So once again, Penn State looking at, I think, some of the metrics that matter. And if you're not going to get a guy who is all of the things, who is 6'3" and runs 4.5, and this is a guy who is all the important things for their defense, because even in this particular scheme under Tom Allen, if he stays a long time, coverage is really important from those box linebackers. He puts a lot of stress on them to be good coverage players because of some of the things that he does in the secondary. So you mentioned something that I thought was interesting, and I just want to come back around to this, the conversation about Manny Diaz, and this was a guy who committed to Duke, and is there, I don't know if it's an honor among thieves situation in recruiting, or if all's fair in love and war, other cliches I could throw out. Is it interesting to you that they went after a guy who chose Duke? Obvious parallels between the two programs and the two defenses.
Yeah, I think it's interesting to me because you look at the way that they've approached, for lack of a better word, friendly fire with Brent Pry at Virginia Tech, and you haven't seen them go after a ton of those guys. No, I think Brent's been there long enough where you kind of grow out of that. But Manny's in his first year. But yeah, there was no, would you say, no honor among thieves or whatever. Penn State saw a prospect that they liked. They decided this was a worthwhile endeavor and a flippable prospect, and they were able to do that regardless of who the head coach is. It's interesting. You look at Cam Smith and the obvious connection there, former St. Joe's Prep head coach Gabe Infante, who was an analyst at Penn State, who really helped Penn State in terms of getting guys into campus and things like that. Now is an assistant at Duke, and there's certainly connections there. So it's an interesting one to me on that level. It's a more of a nerdy deep dive level than the surface thing. But I think that's definitely interesting indeed. And then you throw the St. Joe's Prep layer on top of it. You throw the layer of Penn State struggling in state. This is a top 10 player in state, even though, yes, again, he's from across the border in New Jersey. But this is, I think there's levels to this one, and Penn State's playing off it. But I think the level that matters here is that Cam Smith's a pretty good football player, and that's a guy that can fit in. You're not just taking a guy to take a guy; it's a guy that fit in. I don't have reliable speed numbers on him, but if you put on that tape, there's one clip in particular where a teammate has an interception, and Cam Smith runs past everybody, and eventually, basically goes down, touches the goal line, and comes back and blocks for him, basically. So I don't have any concerns about whether he can run. You mentioned the length. We're talking about 32-inch arms, so you're not T-Rexing it. As we've seen with some of those linebackers. So there's a lot to like here. Again, I think the size is going to knock him a little bit, but right on that 3-star, 4-star line is a good place to be for Cam Smith. I think he's a really productive player. And, you take that next step in state, you take that next step at St. Joe's Prep. I mentioned Haskell, wrote an update on Haskell over the weekend. It's a guy that if you look deeper into, he's got an 87 rating from On3 right now, but I think he's going to be a 4-star prospect and grows into one of the better defensive linemen in the region. So be really interested to see what the next step is there. But for now, Cam Smith completes his flip. Penn State will continue to watch that flip game. We're in a dead period now in August, so not a ton that's going to happen. But, you've got some guys that are worth looking into, whether that be a new coach situation like this or a coach on the hot seat situation, or just a place where you can, try and pick off a few guys here down the road. So Penn State, I think, is going to be happy with this one. The linebacker class is interesting to me. You've got Tash, who is a natural linebacker, who's also a really good athlete. He's gotten healthy and tested really well at Penn State at the end of July. You got Cam Smith, who I think is another natural linebacker. And then you've got the guy that also reminds you of Penn State linebackers in a different way, and LeVar Arrington Jr. coming in.
Yep.
Gives you an opportunity to move Deshaun Burnett maybe full-time to an edge prospect. Penn State's continuing to recruit flexibility, but also players that fit within that Tom Allen system.
I love that you mentioned that and how it impacts this 2025 class and some of the ambiguity on the defensive side. He does solve some problems in that situation, but also provides flexibility, I think, for the team moving forward. If all those guys can play linebacker, then you got a bumper crop of linebackers, but more than likely you have a lot of guys that can do a little bit of everything and provide that versatility, which is really important in the modern game of football. And he did tell you right there, keep watching. Keep subscribed to BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. I'm going to flash this up here because it's not going to last forever. 2 months for $1 code PSU1. We're getting into the Penn State football season. We're giving you money. The best content in college football, the best content in Penn State coverage. You get it at BlueWhiteIllustrated.com. You could have it for $1 all the way into October with the code PSU1 because we love you guys for supporting us here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel. Go read his stuff. We got more recruiting information coming. We got a recruiting show on Thursday as well. That'll do it for now for our breaking news commitment story for Sean Fitz. I'm Thomas Frank Carr. Surprised that I wouldn't be able to get my own name out. We'll be back with the next flip, commit, whatever it might be here on the Blue White Illustrated YouTube channel.